Good morning. It is 10:01 a.m. on Sunday, September 1st, 2019. I'm Christiana Ellis. I'm very distracted this morning for all sorts of reasons. This is 5 more minutes. But because today is Sunday, that means I'm continuing my rewatch of Gravity Falls with Season 2, Episode 19, Weirdmageddon Part 2, Escape from Reality. Boom, boom, boom. This is the second to last episode, if we count Part 3 as one double-sized finale, which is how it was originally aired. But it has also subsequently been aired in 2 pieces as Part 3 and 4. I think that as originally aired, I'm going to treat it like a double-sized. So next week will be the finale for the double-sized, series finale. But today we're talking about Part 2 of Weirdmageddon, where Dipper, Wendy, and Seuss must infiltrate the prison that Mabel is in order to rescue her and hopefully save Gravity Falls from Bill Cipher. Now, we actually finished the last episode right as Wendy, Seuss, and Dipper entered the prison, but we start this one with a little bit more scene setting of the craziness in Gravity Falls. We start with a brief shot of a squirrel in what seems like it could be maybe an ordinary setting, except then the mailbox eats the squirrel and we pull back. Gravity Falls is still in its, the throes of awfulness that is Weirdmageddon. This is day 4. We see, a couple of the townsfolk trying to do what they can to survive. For example, thinking, well, maybe if everything was a triangle like Bill Cipher is, maybe that is what he wants and that will protect us. And it proves no, it doesn't make any difference at all. Bill has these flying eyeball things turning all the townspeople to stone, taking them to the big floating pyramid where they're being assembled into this enormous throne for Bill Cipher. And we get a little bit of a talk about, are they conscious there in the throne? He says, no, probably. But we also see Lazy Susan briefly come awake and have to get nudged back into unconsciousness. And so he decides it's time now to send everyone out to conquer the broader world, but they discover something new. Uh-oh, there seems to be some kind of a shield that is actually protecting the rest of the world. There's just like a bubble. So Bill's Weirdmageddon is contained for now. But what is this shield? What is making that happen? Who would know? Well, maybe Ford would know, but he's currently a gold statue. What is he going to have to do about that? But instead, that's just left as kind of a, we need to resolve that. But in the meantime, we, now follow Dipper, Wendy, and Seuss as they enter this prison. They're expecting it to be scary, but instead it turns out, oh my gosh, it's this candy-colored dreamland where everything Mabel could ever want has, been made real and come true. And so this is a neon utopia with stuffed animals and silly cartoony creatures, and Xyler and Kraz, the 2 ridiculous caricatures of hot guys that have shown up once or twice before, driving around. And everyone is kind of astonished, but then they pretty quickly realize what must be happening here is that it's intended to be a place that she won't want to leave. Mabel Land. And so the show has a lot of fun just with all of the silliness that is included in this place, all of the cutesy creatures and doing silly things, and giant waddles being used like a taxi, and it's all, but they're still assuming until they actually meet up with her that Mabel is still being held prisoner here. And so, they fight their way through some waffle guards, and they're trying to rescue Mabel, only to be told when Mabel shows up that she's actually in control of everything here, and she doesn't want to leave. Why would she want to leave? She tells Dipper, it's like, hey, you decided you wanted to stay with Ford and be his apprentice, and I'm just thinking about, based on what I know of the actual outside world, that's that, why would I want to leave? So we have we have this new dilemma then. So Mabel is trying to tell all of these folks that, hey, why would you want to leave either? This place can be everything you want too. And so Wendy is distracted by what appears to be her friends suddenly appearing in a monster truck saying they're going to go blow up the school and glue a plunger to the principal's head. And so she thinks that seems like fun and goes off with them. Seuss is briefly tempted with a pudding-filled cheeseburger, but that's not enough to completely draw him away. Instead, he is drawn away by a vision of what is supposedly his father, even though he explicitly mentions that it would have had to be created from his imagination because he doesn't remember his real dad. But the opportunity to play catch with his dad is just too much, and so he is also drawn away. We also have Dipper perhaps given just a little bit of an edge to hold on to his current feelings by seeing Dippy Fresh, which is the artificial version of himself that Mabel has created more to her customization, in the sense that he is radical and wears sunglasses, and he is always supportive of his sister. And Dipper is frustrated at seeing this sort of caricatured version of himself. But he refuses to even look at what Mabel tries to provide as far as what he, the thing he would want. And he insists that she return to reality, but she refuses, and he's just stuck. So he kind of just, he stomps off, not sure what to do. We see him angrily try to skip a rock, and it just skips ridiculously perfectly, accompanied by little like baby laugh giggle sounds, and it's just like the stuffed animal tree congratulates him, and it's all very silly. But he is distraught because it's a hard sell. It's like, how can he even, like, he doesn't know how he can possibly make an argument against this if she won't just listen to reason. So Wendy shows up, and this, I think, is a pretty ingenious little moment for the show, where Wendy shows up and says, basically tells him, first of all, what he would expect to hear, which is that, oh yeah, I was briefly tempted by that vision, but you know what? It got old after a while. I know that you're the one that actually knows what's going on, because like, you're so smart and you're gonna figure this out. But you know what? Maybe if only you were older, we could actually be together. But hey, maybe in this place, Mabel could make you older, and then it would work, right? And it's the build of stuff that we would expect Wendy to say, up to the point where it starts to cross that line between, oh no, this isn't Wendy at all. This is a fake version of Wendy made up to tempt him. And he does see through it before accepting the offer. Good for him. But the build in that scene is great because it starts very subtle. We recall during the Shapeshifter episode, when the Shapeshifter took Wendy's form and again tried to tempt Dipper into believing that she was the real one by, you know, like, oh, but hey, maybe I'm into you, that sort of thing. That was pretty transparent at the time. You know, he knew better even in that moment. He knew what he would want to be true, but he also knew, it was very clear that that was not the real Wendy. In this case, the realization is much more subtle, and I thought that that was just a very effective way for the show to try to trap Dipper like that. But he does see through it, he does resist it, and that is when she suddenly horrifically turns out to be made of like weird cockroaches things, and everything looks and turns scary for just a second. You know, we're watching you, Dipper, and it's basically revealing that all this cutesy stuff is kind of just a front for the scary stuff. And he is horrified. Oh my God, oh my God. And then, of course, it all goes back to being cutesy again. But, oh no, what is he going to do? But seeing how close he came to getting trapped himself, and also understanding a little bit better how this place works, he decides once again to go in and, you know, return. Let's see, I'm trying to just make sure I'm not saying things out of order. Let's see. Okay, so I think, yeah, we had another brief interlude with Bill Cipher where he learns that Dipper has gotten past Gideon and is in the prison, but it's mostly just a setup again to, you know, lead us back into there, because he mostly is talking about how it's one of his most diabolical traps yet. It would require a will of titanium to escape. And so, but that's all that really happens in that bit. So we have now that Dipper is, you know, he decides that he just has to try again to get Mabel out of this. And he demands that she return with him to reality. And this, of course, is the big rule. You know, we had it alluded to that there was only one rule in Mabel Land, and we don't even need to say it, because who would ever want to do that? And apparently that rule is mentioning reality. So at this point, they are planning, you know, all of the citizens of Mabel Land are planning to just exile Dipper. But this is where Mabel actually starts to show cracks in her sort of whole, you know, feeling of wanting to stay. She's just like, wait, but he's my brother. I don't want to just exile him. So they put it all together like it's going to be a trial for him. And the trial stuff is very silly. It's a little cat judge with a squeaky gavel, and the jury of Dipper's peers consists of a whole bunch of Mabel duplicates, all wearing identical headbands, but having you know, slightly varying sweaters, which is kind of fun. The opposing counsel is Zyler and Kraz, and they basically start talking about, like, why would anyone want to go back to reality? Reality is awful. You know, this place is nice. Why would you want to leave a nice place for an awful place? It's crazy. And they start talking about bad memories from reality, and this is what reality is. And we see a bit where the twins, when they were younger, had a photo day where Mabel was really excited and then got gum stuck in her hair. And then they also show a memory of Dipper feeling heartbroken because he didn't get any school Valentines, which, I mean, I don't know how other schools did Valentines, but whenever my class did it, it was pretty much the sort of thing of like, everyone got a Valentine for everyone. That was the rule. You know, you didn't just bring one for just one person. I don't know. Maybe that's some people's experience. It would happen differently. Anyway, though, he is heartbroken, though, and it's just, you know, it's Dipper tries to say, well, that's all in the past. And they say, well, but yeah, you've had bad memories just over this summer, and shows, memories of arguing with Mabel and all of that sort of thing. And it's just going back and forth in this, because Dipper's trying to say, he has the tough argument here, which is to say, yes, you should go back. It's not that bad. That's unfortunately, the weakness of his argument is that, he can't deny that those bad things happen. But how does he make the case that, yes, but you should go back there anyway, because why? But ultimately, what he kind of comes down to, though, is a turn very similar to what Inside Out would then do, which is this idea of how no memory has just one emotional context. They change because there's a continuity, because we exist in a world of linear time where, yes, there was that moment where Mabel was heartbroken because she got gum in her hair and it was disappointing about the picture. But what happened after that is, to try to make her feel better, Dipper comes up and there's a moment where it seems obvious that his suggested solution is going to be to offer to let her wear his hat. And yet, instead of that, he pulls out a pair of clippers that is like, why does he have clippers, whatever. And he shaves the stripe in his head. And then she does too, to shave the gum out. And then they're like twins looking silly with stripes shaved in their head. And it's like, that's fun and heartwarming, except it's also just feels like overkill. But all right. Anyway, but the point being, she felt bad. It was a bad memory, but it was followed by a good memory of them having their bond with each other. And then for the Valentine's Day, he remembers that, because he felt so bad and he had run off by himself, that Mabel had made a special one for him out of all of the others, to call him the best brother ever. And so he basically tells her that how he is realized now, in sort of struggling to keep her, how crazy it was that he even ever considered taking Ford's apprenticeship when it would mean separating him from Mabel. And he is essentially framing this not as, come with me and I'll stay, but more like, I can't believe I ever even considered it. Of course I won't. And so that's actually kind of what gets through to her, is the real value she holds on that relationship. And overall, let's see. And so she decides that she'll go and give, they talk about awkward sibling hug, which is a throwback to the very first episode. And she says, no, sincere sibling hug. And they do the hug, complete with the pat, shoulder pat, which is silly and fun. But of course, this is what breaks the spell, so to speak. And now Mabel no longer has control over the Mabel Land inhabitants, and it starts all falling apart. They have to flee. It's kind of interesting that Xyler and Kraz and Waddles seem to be the only inhabitants that are not, that don't turn during this moment. Now with Waddles, it's because it's revealed that I guess it was the real Waddles, I guess. Sure, why not? And so Waddles actually escapes with them. So he's no longer big once they get out of the prison, but was the real Waddles. Xyler and Kraz, though, we just see them sort of cowering in fear when everything else turns monstrous. And then, after during the credits, we get a moment where where it's revealed that they actually survived the destruction of the prison, and they're in the real world now, and they're a little bit like, are we real? And then they quote Jean-Paul Sartre with discussions of what it means to be real, which is all very silly. And it's also just interesting briefly to consider that the possibility that they have been made fully manifest as real is the result of them having been created when they were all in Stan's mindscape. It's a possibility. Anyway, though, now that we have a nice concluding note that is now once they escape, and Mabel is kind of horrified to see what has become of Gravity Falls, because we have to remember she was unconscious ever since she handed over the rift to Bill. So she never saw any of that stuff. She woke up in the prison already. But so she is horrified to see all that, but resolved that, together they're going to restore Gravity Falls. And then she tells him too, look, you don't actually have to stay. I understand that, this thing with Ford is what you wanted. And so I appreciate what you said, but you don't have to stay. And then he promises, no, of course I'll, the two of us will stay together. So they have to figure out what to do next. They decide to try to find safety in the Mystery Shack. And then, of course, we get this build up to realizing that there's, along with Grunkle Stan, who we haven't seen in a little while, a whole bunch of other town refugees have taken, have hidden in the Mystery Shack, hiding from Bill, and that forms what's going to be the, this resistance army that we'll see in the next part. So that pretty much covers Weirdmageddon Part 2. So next time, we will discuss the series finale, Take Back the Falls. And it is a double-sized episode, so we'll get to that next week. And I have decided that after next week, the new rewatch that I will, continue doing on every Sunday will be for Cowboy Bebop. So look forward to that. But next week, the finale. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.